We are recording. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Covenant Calendar Club. We appreciate you viewing this video, and we only wish that you would have been able to be here yourself. And so we're just going to greet you with a big, warm welcome. Hello, everybody.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. And we're going to go ahead and get started and mute our mics and give the mic over to Tim, who will be starting our presentation this evening. Take it away, Tim.
Thank you. Okay, David's Qodesh Lechem, set-apart bread. How does the set-apart bread solve the riddle to this calendar puzzle? Joshua 3:5 had confirmed the placement of the weekly Sabbaths. Some believe the weekly Sabbaths are set according to the lunar cycles. However, the first day of the lunar cycle is merely the first day of the month and not counted within the 1 to 7 weekly count. It then follows that the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and 29th days of the month are the weekly Sabbaths each and every month until the lunar cycle resets everything. For lunar Sabbaths, this means Abib 15 is not only the first unleavened bread Sabbath, but also the weekly Sabbath. Remember, Joshua 3:5 demonstrated the Abib 14 Passover was on the 7th cycle of the week. The Leviticus instructions show first fruits follows the H7676 Sabbath, which links to only the weekly Sabbath, Abib 15, was not included as the weekly Sabbath. Neither the first or second feast Sabbath of unleavened bread connects to the Hebrew word H7676, designating the weekly Sabbath. Therefore, Joshua disqualified the 15th of the month as always being the weekly 7676 Sabbath, as claimed by the lunar calendar. Samuel will also confirm the placement of the weekly Sabbaths. In Samuel's testimony, the weekly lunar Sabbaths of the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th are counterfeits. Specifically related to this study, the first day of the month most certainly is counted as integral and essential with the weekly count of 7. The lunar calendar is another very poor counterfeit calendar against the true covenant calendar. Today's study is yet another witness against the counterfeit lunar calendar. Something else to think about. I wonder if Samuel realized that his book would take care of other calendar counterfeits, like the Enoch/Zadok calendar. Has anyone here heard of the Zadok calendar?
Yes, with all the priestly gates and all the priests and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm of the mindset that we have, there's a new priest in town, the high priest, the King of Kings, the one and only.
Yahusha HaMashiach.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, let's examine the lunar first.
Join the meeting.
Setting the stage. Number 1. The controversy. There are several different belief systems that arrive at a specific pattern of dates for lunar calendars. The lunar calendar, the lunar-based calendar, which uses the moon in any one of its phases to achieve these dates for the Sabbath. And the Aaronic priestly courses of the Levites, which arrive at the same dated style of calendar, only without the moon. The stipulations of these calendars both claim that the first day of the month is not counted as a normal weekday. Instead, the first day is classified as an individual day entirely separate from the weekly count of 7. The mechanics of the lunar calendar. For the very basics, the dates are as such. The first day of the month not counted, but is a special day. The second day of the month is always the first day of the lunar week, which begins the weekly count of 7. And we're going to look very, very closely at that on this study. The 8th day of the month is a Sabbath. Consequently, the 15th, 22nd, and 29th are also considered weekly Sabbaths. The 30th day. If and when there is one in the lunar-based calendar, it is not counted. And I ask you, did Yahusha create anything that could not be accounted for? Just something to put in the back of your head. The month and the week then both reset and restart anew with the weekly count starting on the second day of the month. For this purpose of the illustration, this lunar calendar month will begin with the first sliver of the moon on the 4th cycle of the week. Notice the dates where the weekly Sabbaths place when they follow the lunar cycles. You see my mouse here? There's your 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. And these are what they declare as their Sabbaths.
So they can fall anywhere in...
Yeah, but they're always on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, no matter what. And they calculate their months to accommodate that. See, they start here on the 2nd of the month because the first day of the month is not counted. The 2nd of the month is the first day of your weekly 7 count. And so you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's your 7th day. They claim that's a Sabbath, and it will always be on the 8th of the month. And your second week comes in, and your next 7, they declare a weekly Sabbath, and it falls on the 15th. Okay, and we saw that there was a big problem with this in Joshua. But this is what they claim with their lunar calendar. And they also claim that the 30th and the 1st are not counted. They're just, I don't know, I guess anonymous days, I guess. Setting the stage number 2 for this study. The controversy, the Enoch-Zadok calendar. On Enoch's Dead Sea Scroll-based calendar, it is claimed that the Sabbaths never once fall upon a 6th cycle of the month. Also, the books of Rachel Elior verify this clearly with charts. The following chart is from a YouTube presentation promoting the same situation. Please note on the next slide the absence of any Sabbath days of any kind landing upon the 6th cycle of the month. And we will compare this thought, what you're about to see in this study. Okay, here's a picture of the YouTube promotion for the Enoch-Zadok calendar. And they claim that the Sabbaths do not land on the 6th. And you can see this here. These are repeating numbers. They repeat through the months. And so it goes with this set and the month number 3 set. They repeat all through the year. Is there a Sabbath on the 6th? Here, 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 or here? We do not see a Sabbath in the Enoch calendar on the 6th of the month. And that is going to become very, very crucial for this study.
Did you mean on the Enoch calendar or on this lunar?
On the Enoch calendar.
Oh.
The Enoch and Zadok calendar. They claim that there are no Sabbaths on the 6th of the month.
Actually, Tim, that's the same for the lunar calendar. They never have a Sabbath on the 6th of the month either when they follow the lunar cycles.
Okay, yeah, I haven't searched that. That could be. Thank you, Charlene.
Well, that's right. If they start on the 8th and the 15th and the 22nd and 29th, they never do hit a 6.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very good. In this study, the conclusive dates and cycles will align like this. There's your scriptures, and here is your pagan names to the week, and the days of the month as seen in Samuel 20 and 21. These are the days of the first week of the month as observed by David, Jonathan, and Saul. So where's my mouse? Here on the this first cycle is going to line up with the 30th on the previous month. And you'll see here is the, well, I'll explain it. It'll be explained farther in through this study. It might confuse you right now. Please note very carefully that the seventh-day Sabbath places upon the sixth day of the month in this event recorded in the scriptures. And if you look onto the right of your screen, you'll see that the Sabbath day lines up with the sixth day of the month. And this is what is stated on beforehand, so you can see how it shows this in this study. Purpose of this study. Samuel places great emphasis upon the recording of events between David, Jonathan, and Saul. People who desire to see a Sabbath based on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th claim this selection from the scriptures absolutely proves that the first day of the month is separate from the 7 days that form a week. The full purpose of this study is to determine if this lunar understanding of the first cycle of the month is correct or if it is a mistake, and if Enoch's calendar is correct. Extensive research on the Hebrew word Qodesh has already been undertaken and accomplished. Translators have deliberately mistranslated Qodesh as new moon. The Hebrew language, especially Torah, does not promote this concept. Qodesh is a verb. It is defined as the renewing and or the rebuilding of whatever concept to which it is applied. When yearly time is the subject and Qodesh is applied to define this idea, a renewing and or the rebuilding correctly applies to the first cycle of the month. Qodesh cannot be linked in any way through the Hebrew language to the moon. Qodesh has zero connection to the moon. There are many studies from the scriptures to express this. Today's study is prepared with this scripturally sound belief in mind. All scripture will be taken from the scriptures edition unless otherwise noted. Questions for focus. Will the first 24-hour cycle of the month be counted as one of the 7 cycles of the week? Or will the first 24-hour cycle of the month be determined by a separate identity from the weekly count of 7? The test will be found in 1 Samuel 20, 21, 1-6. Persistently inquire for every recorded event. What are the correct dates of the month? What are the coinciding cycles of the week for each event? Will 1 Samuel 20 and 21, 1-6 record a seventh-day Sabbath event? Another hyper important question, and I go to repeat that question, the first question again. Will 1 Samuel 20 and 21, 1-6 record a seventh-day Sabbath event? Here's the hyper important question. If there is a recorded seventh-day Sabbath in this account, which cycle of the month is it on? And it's the way I operate is that the statutes of Yahuwah declare all time. And since the seventh-day Sabbath is his premier feast, I believe that will determine time. And you're going to see that later on in this study. And last, but most certainly not least, in circulation today, a proposed concept claims the weeks of the month must reset at the start of each lunar month. Will this proposed monthly week reset pattern find alignment in 1 Samuel 20? Helps for this study. This presentation requires a sidebar calendar to get started in the study. Comparisons using the visual aid of a familiar calendar will be given throughout the study. Try to make use of a worksheet for your involvement in solving this puzzle. How many of you downloaded and printed out that worksheet so you could mark it out as we go along in this study? I hope everyone did, because it will help your understanding. Caution. Some scripture translations will not give enough specific details to solve this puzzle. And we have found this through presenting this study numerous times. Some people cannot get it, and we ask why. And we look at their edition of the scriptures, and it does not give correct and or sufficient information to determine time. The date selection to get started. The 30th cycle of the month will be placed on the first cycle of the week. The reason for this will be realized near the end of this study. Charlene, do you want to go here?
Sure. We're going to have about 15 of these slides that will be introducing different sections of the study as we go along, and this is number 1. David clearly identifies 2 separate dates. And we want to know what 2 dates does David isolate?
Go ahead, Charlene.
Okay, so we're going to be looking at scripture with this sidebar calendar, and then we'll be reviewing with a real calendar so you can see it both ways. In 1 Samuel 20 verse 5, it says, "And David said to Jonathan, see, tomorrow is the new month, and I ought to sit with the sovereign to eat." So he's saying this on the 30th, and he's talking about the first being tomorrow. Is David really speaking on the 30th of the month? That would be the old month. Yes, but this will be solidly verified soon. We're just making an assumption right now. And he says, "But let me go, and I shall hide in the field until the 3rd day at evening." We're looking at calendar language here. And this is the first witness.
And here's your familiar calendar. So this is what people are more familiar to look at, so it makes it a little bit simpler. And David said to Jonathan, "See, tomorrow is the new month, and I ought to sit with the sovereign to eat. But let me go, and I shall hide in the field until the 3rd day." So they're identifying 3 days here pretty clearly. Consider carefully. Will Jonathan become a second witness to David's identification of the new month cycle? The 30th and the same conversation, 1 Samuel 20:11. "And Jonathan said to David, 'Come and let us go out into the field.' And they both went out into the field. And Jonathan said to David, 'Yahuwah, Elohim of Yisrael, be witness, when I search out my father sometime,' when? Tomorrow. That will be the new month cycle. Or the 3rd day, and see if there is good toward David. And I do not send it to you or disclose it to you." Where does the count begin for the 3rd day? Count begins on the 1st. And we're going to see a whole bunch of this counting to 3. And we mentioned this earlier. Charlene mentioned it in previous studies that we need to pay attention to our counting to 3. We're going to see a lot more of it tonight. Here's the familiar calendar so people can make it a little bit easier to understand because you're not used to the sidebar calendar yet. And Jonathan said to David, "Elohim of Yisrael, Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael be witness, when I search out my father sometime tomorrow, or the third day, and see if there is good toward David, and I do not send it to you or disclose it to you. There's your 1 to 3 count again. Considering carefully, regarding Saul's wicked intent, does Jonathan count the 3 consecutive cycles the same as David? Here's our familiar calendar. Yes, Jonathan agreed with David. So the two of them are talking on the same page. They're in full agreement with these 3 days. This is a second witness to the covenant calendar. Will Jonathan provide an affirmation for his second witness for the timing of the new month cycle? Will this affirmation occur on the 30th? Jonathan reaffirms the new month cycle. So Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is the new month, and you shall be missed because your seat shall be empty. So it becomes pretty clear that he was speaking on the 30th, on the last day of the previous month. He's identifying the new month day, tomorrow. Jonathan's conversation with David was held on the last day of the month. And here's the familiar calendar again. Jonathan's reaffirmation. So Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is the new month, and you shall be missed because your seat shall be empty. Yes, again, Jonathan agrees with David. Verse 18 is the second witness to David's timing declaration. And I want to bring this out. There's many witnesses to what we're going to be looking at today. That's why I'm trying to emphasize this, the many times of witnesses. Another point to consider. How did Jonathan count to 3? From the second cycle of the month? Or from the new month cycle? Some insight. Charlene, you want to read this?
Sure. Why the question about counting from the second cycle of the month? Why would we talk about that? Jonathan has an opportunity here to assert by solid categorization where the new month cycle belongs. Does Jonathan seize this opportunity to declare the new month cycle as being separated from the week, or will he do something else?
Jonathan continues speaking. And on the third day, go down quickly, and you shall come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and shall remain by the stone Etzel. The third day is not identified by a named weekday designation, but is recognized as integral with the cycles of the month. Jonathan does not categorize the first cycle of the month as being separate. Jonathan counts to 3. Jonathan is speaking on the 30th. And on the third day, go down quickly, and you shall come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and shall remain by the stone Etzel. New points to analyze. What happened at the evening meal on the new month cycle? Where was David? What did Saul say? David's location, and Saul is silent. And David hid in the field, and when the new month came, the sovereign sat down by the food to eat. So this is pretty certain that we're on new month day, number 1. And the sovereign sat on his seat as at other times on a seat by the wall, and with Jonathan standing and Abner sitting by Shaul's side. But the place of David was empty. And Shaul spoke not a word that day, for he thought it is an accident. He is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. An important point to consider. Why is verse 27 of 1 Samuel 20 so important? While David was hiding, 1 Samuel 20:27, and it came to be the next day, that would be the second day of the month. The second day of the month that David's place was empty. Is this a squandered opportunity? Why has Yahuwah disregarded this opportunity to declare, assert, and define the second cycle of the month as the first cycle of the week of the lunar month? And some of you might have to sit back and just think about that question for a little bit, because the lunar calendar declares the second cycle of the month is the first cycle of the week. However, we are seeing here that these men are testing to it differently. And the second day of the month is also, or the first day of the month is also counted in the weekly count. Why a squandered opportunity? If Yahuwah desired to supply us with a witness to the second day of the month, being the first day of the week, as consistently required by these suggested calendar systems, why is it not recorded in the scriptures like this? And it came to be the next day, the first day of the week, that David's place was empty. See, if it had been recorded like that, then we could say for absolute certain that the second day of the month was the first day of the week. But it's not written like this in the scriptures. This is not how it's stated. And so if the second was the first day of the week, then they missed this golden opportunity to witness or to show us from the scriptures, because it's just not that way. Also, why did the Sabbath then arrive only 4 days later, on the 6th of the month? How can you have 7 days between the 2nd and the 6th? It does not happen. Completing 1 Samuel 20:27. And it came to be the next day, the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Shaul said to Jonathan, his son, why has the son of Yishai not come to eat? Either yesterday or today. So Shaul is pointing out the first of the month and the second of the month. And it tells us right here, the second day of the month. So we're very, very certain about this second day of the month. Summarizing it all together on the calendar. 1 Samuel 20:25. And the sovereign sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall, with Jonathan standing, and Abner sitting by Shaul's side. But the place of David was empty. Verse 26. But Shaul spoke not a word that day, for he thought it is an accident. He is not clean, for he has not been cleansed. So this is the first day of the month. And the next verse, verse 27, and it came to be the next day, the second of the month, David's place was empty. And Shaul said to Jonathan, his son, why has the son of Yishai not come to eat, either yesterday or today? I hope everybody can understand this and see it on the familiar type calendar, so it makes it easier to understand. Next point to consider. Charlene, do you want to do this?
Sure. What else happened on the second cycle of the month?
Charlene?
Saul's spear was hurled. It tells us in 1 Samuel 20:28-32, there is an explanation given to Jonathan, by Jonathan to Saul, for David's absence, which turned very ugly on the account of the jealousy of Saul. And Saul violently tried to impale Jonathan with a lethal spear. It says in 1 Samuel 20, verse 33, "At that Saul hurled a spear at him to smite him, and then Jonathan knew that his father had resolved to put David to death." In verse 34, it says, "And Jonathan rose up from the table in the heat of displeasure, and he ate no food on the 2nd day of the month." There's some calendar language. "For he was grieved for David because his father put him to shame."
And we have, we have another witness, again, for the 2nd day of the month. Thanks, Charlene. Consider Yahuwah's command. What is recorded as Jonathan's next move? Point number 9, continued. The scriptures record that Jonathan went out into the field at the appointed time. When? The next morning. And we all know what day follows number 2. Question. How many cycles from the new month cycle did Jonathan tell David he would return to the field? 1 Samuel 20:19. And on the 3rd day, the morning after the 2nd day. And Jonathan rose up from the table in the heat of displeasure and ate no food on the 2nd day of the month, for he was grieved for David because his father put him to shame. And it came to be in the morning, the 3rd cycle of the month, that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a small youth was with him. Consider Jonathan's response. Did Jonathan keep his promise to David to beat him? Jonathan keeps his promise. 1 Samuel 20:38. And Jonathan shouted after the youth, "Make haste, hurry, do not stand still." And Jonathan's youth picked up the arrows and came to his master. Do we really think that command, make haste, hurry, do not stand still, was that specifically for the youth to pick up his arrows? Was Jonathan really intent on getting those arrows ASAP? Or was that command for David? The new month day, and there it's pointing out, it was in the morning when Jonathan sternly directed David to flee. Question. How long do the scriptures say it took for David to gather his personal items and flee? The scriptures say nothing about David gathering his personal belongings. It only records that David arose and left. That's in 1 Samuel 20:42. David flees immediately. David and Jonathan said a very sorrowful goodbye. David departed immediately. How do we know? 1 Samuel 21:8. And David said to Ahimelech, Is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I have brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the matter of the sovereign was urgent. What man known as a fierce warrior travels without his weapons? Yes, David left immediately after saying goodbye to Jonathan. David's hunger exposes the cycle of the week. 1 Samuel 21:1. And David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech trembled when he met David and asked him, Why are you alone and no one is with you? Verse 2. And David said to Ahimelech the priest, The sovereign has commanded me a word and said to me, Let no one know whatever of the word about which I send you, and which I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. Verse 3. And now, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves into my hand, or whatever is found. David is hungry in Nob. David must have been hiding in the local area for the 3 days. Why? Because from Gibeah, the city of Saul's home, to Nob is only 5 kilometers. You can see that on the map over there. It's just a short distance away. Considering David's request, a provision from the priest in the sanctuary.
David's request, give 5 loaves into my hand. What type of bread was available? 1 Samuel 21:4 says, and the priest answered David and said, there is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is set apart bread, provided the young men have kept themselves from women. The set apart bread was the showbread of the tabernacle.
Considering the showbread, what were the special conditions requested of David before receiving the showbread? David's conditions for receiving showbread. Ahimelech, the Cohen priest, was demanding that the statutes pertaining to this specific Qodesh set-apart bread would be upheld with the greatest of care. Had David and or the men with him had intimate relations with a lady shortly before this time, they would have been defiled, or they would have defiled the set-apart standard of purity required for this special bread. Only a person who was pure was permitted to eat the showbread of the tabernacle. Leviticus 15:18. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they both shall bathe in water and shall be unclean until evening. The showbread stipulation repeated.
Okay. Prior to giving David the showbread, Ahimelech, the Cohen priest, makes absolute certain that David knows about abstaining from intimate relations by David's men. 1 Samuel 21:4. And the priest answered David and said, there is no ordinary bread on hand, but there is set apart bread, provided the young men have kept themselves from women. What was David's response? David answers the Cohen, 1 Samuel 21:5. And David answered the priest and said to him, truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are set apart, and it is an ordinary mission, and also it was set apart in the vessel today. Note, David did not say, this is the 3rd day since I came out. The words indicate clearly that David classified the 3 days since fleeing from Saul has been past tense. The 3 days were behind him in history.
David's sixth of the month reply, 1 Samuel 21:5. And David answered the priest and said to him, truly women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are set apart, and it is an ordinary mission, and also it was set apart in the vessel today. That is the 6th day of the month. Note that very carefully. There is Qodesh, the new month day. And you'll notice, where's my mouse? I can't find my mouse. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there in the gray box on the 30th, that is the last day of the previous month. And my computer's not working. Oh. Something's happened to my computer. Well, I'm not sure what it is. Charlene, you might need to get your computer, your screen share ready, because my computer's, oh, something's happening here.
You got it?
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it froze up for a little bit. Okay. Let me back up here again. There's your Qodesh new month day. And here is the morning that he was told to flee in haste. Here is your 1, 2, and 3 days that he was in hiding. This is the 3 days that him and his men were separated from having intimate relations. This is the 6th day of the month. David fled these 3 days from Saul upon strong advice from Jonathan. David was speaking to the Cohen, Ahimelech, on the 6th cycle of the month. This is hyper important information, and I can't stress this enough. The 6th day of the month. Considering the showbread instructions, are there special instructions for renewing the showbread?
This study now transitions to critically important information. It is super serious. Please allow me to suggest to you that the next verse and actions of the Cohen priest will reveal exactly, to the extent of absolute precision, what cycle of the week it was that David was requesting bread for his men and himself. Let's examine it with great care. 1 Samuel 21:6. Then the priest gave him set-apart bread, for there was no bread there except the showbread, which had been taken from before Yahuwah in order to put hot bread in on the day it is taken away. And
this is another version.
Hallelujah Scriptures, Samuel 21:6. Then the Cohen gave him Qodesh bread, for there was no bread there except the showbread, which had been taken from before Yahuwah in order to put hot bread in on the day it is taken away.
So it becomes quite clear what day that bread was to be exchanged.
Yes, indeed.
And the next slide is just some more different versions of that same verse, just to be absolute certain. We're not going to read them, but this is just more witnesses of when that bread was to be exchanged. 1 Samuel 21:6. So the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken from before Yahuwah, to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. That is out of the KJV 16:11. Mark, are you there? Mark, I would like you to read some scriptures for me if you're there. I'd like you to look up Leviticus 24:5-9, and if you could read that for me, Mark, I would appreciate it. What are the instructions for showbread that has just been removed from the tabernacle's set-apart place? Answer, Leviticus 24:5-9. And if there's somebody else that could look up 1 Chronicles 9:32, I would appreciate that.
I've got 9:32.
Yeah, excellent.
So you ready for 24:5-9?
I would appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
And you shall take fine flour, bake 12 cakes with it, 2/10 of an ephah on each cake, and you shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, and on the clean table before Yahuwah. And you shall put clear frankincense on each row, and it shall be on the bread as a remembrance portion, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. On every Shabbat, he is to arrange it before Yahuwah continually from the children of Yasharel, an everlasting covenant. And it shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in the set apart place, because it is the most set apart unto him from the offerings of Yahuwah, made by fire, an everlasting law.
Excellent. So I think it's verse 8, is it, Mark, that tells us that the bread is to be changed on every Shabbat?
Yes, on every Shabbat, he is to arrange it before Yahuwah continually from the children of Yasharel, an everlasting covenant. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a statute. So there is no other day that bread can be switched out. And we want to keep that close to our heart. Thank you. Thank you for reading that, Mark. Mario, could you read 1 Chronicles 9:32, please?
First Chronicles 9:32. And other of their brethren of the sons of the Cohenites were over the showbread to prepare it every Sabbath.
Okay, there's two witnesses. For when that showbread is replaced, it is the Sabbath. Now the brutally important question arises. Considering the showbread replacement, what divine cycle of the week delegates new showbread for the sanctuary? And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it, 2/10 of an ephah in each cake. Verse 6. Oh, how come that cloud disappeared with the number 13 in it? Did anybody see that cloud? Why wasn't there 13 cakes? Why was there only 12? Just something to put in the back of your head. Leviticus 24:6. And you shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, and on the clean table before Yahuwah. And you shall put clear frankincense on each row, and it shall be on the bread as a remembrance portion, an offering made by fire to Yahuwah. And on every Shabbat, he is to arrange it before Yahuwah continually from the children of Yisrael, an everlasting covenant. And it shall be for Aharon and his sons, and they shall eat it in the set-apart place, because it is most set apart to him from the offerings of Yahuwah made by fire, an everlasting law. So it's very, very special bread. Go ahead.
I'm just going, woo-woo. Yeshua all over the page. What an offering. Hallelujah.
Yes.
Bread of life, man. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, don't be sorry. Keep going, Mario.
Excited.
Assembling pertinent points. David was speaking to the Cohen on the 4th cycle after he came out. The time frame of point number 1 above is the 6th cycle of the month. David is asking for the showbread. The showbread is exchanged upon the 7th-day Sabbath, discerning David's week. Since the showbread is always exchanged upon the 7th-day Sabbath, upon which day of the week was the 6th cycle of the month in this account? The 6th cycle of the month was the 7th-day Sabbath. Is it possible that the bread was exchanged on another cycle of the week? What was the Cohen's response to David? 1 Samuel 21:6. So the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread that was taken away from before Yahuwah, to be replaced by hot bread on the day when it was taken away. And that is from the Eastern Bible, derived from the Peshitta. David requests bread from the Cohen. 1 Samuel 21:3. And now, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves into my hand, or whatever is found. Okay. The first day of this week started on the 30th day of the previous month. New month day is right here. That is the 1st. This is when he didn't show up for his meal with Saul. This is the 2nd day, which they identified very, very clearly with several witnesses. And this is the morning when Jonathan was told to flee now in haste. Jonathan hid these 3 days. He was in hiding, and he went to talk to Ahimelech on this morning, right here. This is the 6th day of the new month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. David referenced these 3 days since he fled from Saul upon intense advice from Jonathan. David and his men are extremely hungry from fleeing. It is the 4th day since David talked with Jonathan by the stone Etzel. David requests bread from the Cohen. 1 Samuel 21:6. Then the priest gave him set-apart bread, for there was no bread there except the showbread, which had been taken from before Yahuwah in order to put hot bread in on the Sabbath day. It is taken away. This is a Sabbath day. This is the 6th day of the month. It is the 7th day of the week. And it is the 4th day that David had fled from Saul. Considering Jonathan, David, and Saul, did any one of these 3 men decide to reset the days of the week to accommodate lunar standards? David, Jonathan, and Ahimelech do not reset their week, the days of the month. David flees in great haste on the morning of the 3rd day. David announces to the Cohen his history of 3 days removed from Saul's reach. David, very hungry, seeks out Ahimelech the Cohen. And now, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves into my hand, or whatever is found. This is the 6th day of the month. Yahuwah's covenant calendar is not reset. 1 Samuel 21:3. And now, what do you have on hand? Give 5 loaves into my hand, or whatever is found. This is the cycles of the months. And I say this plural because this is the end of the old month, the 29th and the 30th, the old month. Here's your new month day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are your days of your month. The 6th of the month is when David asked for the showbread. Here's your cycles of the week when David requested the showbread. If there is anybody that can tell me why that I did this last animation backwards, I would like you to take your mic or turn your mic on and tell me. If you can tell me, I'm going to back this up and I'm going to show you the cycles of the week. It's going to go backwards. Oh, I did it. No. I just got to let it play out. The cycles of the week are going to go backwards. And I would like somebody to tell me why I made that go backwards, if you can tell me.
It was from Sabbath to Sabbath?
Yes. But what I want to point out here very, very strongly is that the statutes of Yahuwah declare all time, period. And the 7th-day Sabbath, again, is the premier feast of Yahuwah. When that 7th-day Sabbath is determined, it is from that point that we can count our week and even count our months, depending on what we're searching for. That's why I did this backwards, because it is this Sabbath on the 6th of the month that is identified by many, many witnesses. It is that Sabbath that determines the week and the month. There is the 30th of the last month, and this lines up directly with the first day of the week. The first day of the week was in the previous month. This is your new month day, and it was counted as one of the week, one of the days of the week. Yahuwah's statutes always determine the covenant calendar. The 6th cycle of the new month is when David asked for the showbread. The fresh showbread, by statute always indicates the seventh-day Sabbath?
You know, it looks like the Gregorian calendar got something right then, doesn't it? Because it shows Sunday as always being the first day of the week and Shabbat always being on the seventh day of the week. Looks like they are pretty consistent with something.
They have one thing right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is a cycles of David's week. Once again, it goes backwards. And the 6th day of the month was the 7th day of David's week. That is identified by David, Jonathan, Saul, and Ahimelech. And of course, Yahuwah. The first focal point of this study, the weekly 7-cycle count, was not reset in this account by either David, Jonathan, or Ahimelech, nor Yahuwah. Why do I say that? Because the lunar calendar demands that the 7-cycle count is reset each month. This flies in the face of the lunar calendar. David's week in this instance started in the previous month. He was told to flee on that morning there on the 3rd. This is his 3 days of hiding for the 3, 4, and 5. And this is David Jonathan's weekly 1 to 7 count. See, it's on the 30th. Over here, the 30th lines up with the first cycle of the week. There it is. And you can count out your days to the 6th day of the month. Count out your days starting here to the 7th day of the week. That's your Sabbath. The 7th day Sabbath was on the 6th of the month. Again, the first of Ahimelech's week was the 30th and last cycle of the previous month. Wait, did you catch that? The 30th cycle of the month was integral with and counted as one cycle of Yahuwah's week. The first cycle of the week on the 30th cycle of the previous month was determined by David, Jonathan, and super significantly by Ahimelech, the high priest, as being counted within Yahuwah's 1 to 7 weekly count. The lunar-based calendar regulations oppose this factor. The first focal point continued. The weekly 7-cycle count was not reset in this account by either David, Jonathan, Saul, or Ahimelech, the high priest. David's week in this instance started in the previous month. Creation's 7 cycles that form a week are a continuous, repetitive cycle operated in a unique manner, separate unto its own accord. Neither the moon nor the priestly duty cycles in the tabernacle have a controlling connection to Yahuwah's creation week of 7 cycles. What Yahushua set in motion at creation will never cease. Appropriate questions. In this example taken from 1 Samuel 20, the first cycle of the month was placed on the second cycle of the first week, or Monday in pagan terms. David, Jonathan, and Saul all lived out the covenant calendar as seen throughout the Torah, the prophets, and the Messianic Testament. How is it that proponents of the lunar Sabbath and the perceived priestly course calendar with the same dates can claim that the first cycle of the month is separate from the weekly count of 7? Or that the first Sabbath of the month must always land on the 8th cycle of the month? How can that be? Now, the second focal point of this study. The Enoch-Zadok calendar claims there are 0 Sabbaths of any kind that land upon the 6th cycle of any month in their calculated calendar. It is time to check out the next slide. Here again is a slide that is retrieved from the YouTube promoting the Zadok calendar. They claim that there is never a Sabbath on the 6th cycle of the month. And if you look in these numbers, you can see there is no 6 to be seen here. So they claim it's impossible for a Sabbath to fall on the 6th. What have we just seen in this event from the scriptures? We have just seen many witnesses that declare the 7th-day Sabbath landing on the 6th cycle of the month. What is happening with our Enoch and Zadok calendar? Is there alignment? Enoch has no Sabbaths on the 6th date of any month. Enoch should read 1 Samuel 20 and 21. The second focal point continued. The Enoch-Zadok calendar cannot find alignment with this scriptural event. The final question. What will your choice of options be? The covenant calendar of the Torah, prophets, and testimonies? Or the calendars of man, which require a moon, non-covenant scroll regulations, or obsolete priesthood regulations in opposition to the covenant calendar as followed by Noah? The patriarchs never once referenced a moon, Dead Sea Scrolls, nor the Aharonic priest courses to determine time. And I think this is a very, very, very pertinent verse. Isaiah 2:22 tells us, "Cease from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for what is he to be reckoned with?" Again, Isaiah, "Stop bringing futile offerings, incense. It is an abomination to me. New moons, Shabbatot, the calling of meetings. I am unable to bear unrighteousness and assembly." And this is one of the most interesting texts in the scripture in my mind, because I left this word moons in there because the irony of this verse is absolutely astounding. That word, or those words, new moons, do not actually exist in the Hebrew. It is actually new month. But Yahuwah has allowed that to be in there so that we can see it, so that we can read it and understand. New moons are not a righteous thing. They are not from him. And he allows us to be able to read that, to shake us out of our slumber. New moons are unrighteousness. That is what he has designated it as. My being hates your new moons and your appointed times. They are a trouble to me. I am weary of bearing them.
Can I bring out something there in that slide?
Certainly.
The word for moon in that slide is Yerach, where it says, "I hate your new." That's Yerach there, right? Or is that Qodesh as well?
I'm pretty sure that was Qodesh, unless I've made a mistake, and I have made mistakes.
Yes, I believe that it is. It's actually supposed to be new month, but in this verse, they were actually worshiping on the pagan new months, which would have been their new moons.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, great.
Yeah. Very interesting verse. Thank you, Mario. My being hates your new moons and your appointed times. They are a trouble to me. I'm weary of bearing them. Charlene, do you want to read this?
Okay. The times and the seasons, they are in Yahuwah's hands, and these verses are from 1 Thessalonians 5:1-8. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of Yahuwah so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. And we'll continue with verse 5. He says, you are the children of light and children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us, who are of the day, be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. And these verses, they speak to me of calendar, that when we understand calendar, we'll not be in the dark of Yahuwah's times and seasons, of these feasts and festivals and the markers that they're going to give us in prophetic times in the end time days, where we're at right now. And so Tim and I are just hoping that each one of you will search out Yahuwah's times and seasons and stay abiding in his hands. Because we'll find a lot in the covenant calendar that will also open up the prophecies. And that's it. Tim can give the blurb on what we're doing next.
The next covenant calendar study will be the Tekufa Unveiled. And that is going to show the scriptures from or the texts from our scriptures that declare the Tekufa as being the end of the previous month, and the catalyst which starts the new month, or new year, I should say. And it's addressing the proper year start for Yahuwah's covenant calendar.
And that word Tekufa is Equinox?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much for another wonderful study.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really enjoyed the graphics that were going on there. Was that you, Charlene, or Tim? Those are some really good graphics. Thank you.
We do it together.
You do it together. Okay. Thank you.
That was awesome, guys. You know, when Abba does it, he really does. If we just look, if we just stop and look, he makes it so simple. All of these other ones are so convoluted.
Yeah, and it's really important too that we do investigate and look at and really get to know what the covenant calendar is, so that when these counterfeits come out, you see the difference between the real thing versus the not quite so real thing. Although, you know, there's a lot of counterfeit bills that are, being handed out, and people buy them and they use it and they get away with it for a while anyway. But the restoration of all things is on its way.
I would just like to mention something, Mario, if I could. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, that's great.
One thing that Tim and I did was we did these studies in order, and I mentioned this before, but for new people that are here, we started in Genesis pretty much, did Exodus, did Leviticus, did Numbers. Tim can shake his head up and down. We did them in order. We did not say for day start, we'll find 2 or 3 witnesses and then that's good enough. We did everything. I think there's 3 or 4 more studies that have to be completed. But the order that these stories come in the scriptures is extremely important, because every story builds on the one before. And there is a secret and there's a code, there's a riddle and a puzzle in the way that these stories are put in order in your scriptures. It's something that you don't see unless you do it in order. So for those of you that have the studies, I know it might be kind of fun to pop into the New Testament and look there before you do these Old Testament stories. But when you do them in order, you will see something that comes to the forefront that you won't see if you're just popping around. It's like doing a tapestry. If you're just popping all over the place, you will sort of see the back part of the tapestry with all the threads and the knots and all the colors. You can't see the picture. But if you do the calendar stories in order, you will be on the right side of the tapestry and you won't have any threads or knots, but you will see the picture. as the tapestry is woven, this warp and this woof that we've talked about, as the tapestry is woven, you will begin to see the picture. I cannot stress this enough, the order. And what we're discovering now is that it just has to be that the lunar Sabbath people and the Enoch people, the moon calendar people, the sunset people, all of these counterfeit calendars, they absolutely have not done these studies in order. And like I said, if Enoch would have looked at, and the lunar people too, would have looked at Samuel 20 and 21, they would have realized that there was a problem. They just didn't look. And it's just right there.
Yeah.
And this happens many times over. So I just really encourage you to look at the studies in their order. They were put there in order for a purpose and divine purpose.
Right. You know, one thing I'd like to do is, you know, tip my hat to those people that are able to take something so confusing and try to work it out and walk by it and live by it, because it's very confusing. His yoke really is simple. It really is much easier. It's liberating. It's so simple. Once we get a hold of these basic truths, when does the day begin and how to, you know, count to 3 and counting, numbering our days, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, we start to see these things all over through the text. As we read general reading, even without study, just general reading, it seems to be a realistic read as opposed to, okay, well, let me calculate all this stuff. But for those that have gone through all that calculate, kudos. I mean, they're, attempting to make a stand. And I'm believing and praying that that everyone will come into a place of recognizing just how burdenless following his covenant calendar, his commandments are, because they're really not burdensome at all. He's given us grace and mercy, but the enablement, that grace to walk it out, it's really not difficult. I remember way back when we used to think slightly differently and thought, well, no one could ever follow those. Well, yes, we can. It's all those confusing add-ons that make it impossible. So,
Mario, the hardest part of doing the dawn studies was trying to take the mass confusion that we've been taught and take this mass confusion and make sense of it so that we can understand it, to show that it's mass confusion. That part is so hard. I had no idea how difficult that was. And when Yahusha said that we are to come to him as children, he was exactly right, because just as you stated, his material is simplistic. It really is. It's man's convoluted confusion that makes things so destructive and difficult to understand.
I like how Brad Scott opens up a lot of his studies. He talks about ask any kid, and so these kids, draw a picture of land and a house and a sun and a tree and mom and dad, and you ask any kid, when does the day begin, and they're going to tell you, when I wake up, in the morning. I mean, it really is simple. I want to. A quick announcement that we will not be getting together from March 23rd until April 13th for preparation of the Passover and unleavened bread and the feast and festival time itself. So we won't be doing anything on those days. But next week we're going to have an open discussion. I think there might be a little bit of review, if I'm not mistaken, but for the most part, open discussion. And one of the things that I want to acknowledge right now is that, Tim, you've done a fantastic job at what you've done since Calendar Club began. And Charlene and Tim have been working together for a while. Tim is a heavy diesel mechanic by trade. and he has felt that standing on a stage or communicating these kind of things is not my forte. And yet, with him and Charlene working together, Charlene's goal is to get us to be able to make presentations ourselves, right? And so Tim is an excellent example of stepping up to the plate, doing a great job. And, now you should start traveling the world and teaching everybody these presentations. So next.
I second that.
Yeah.
When are you coming to Australia, Tim?
So next week, what we're going to do is get together in an open discussion. If you want to start a presentation, be it on a document or a PowerPoint or something, especially, short, so we can all, share our screen. Zoom does provide us with that capability to share each other's screen and share what you might have put together. Danon had sent me a couple of what he's called shorties or gems, and he's off to a good start. So he's not on here right now, but brother Danon, kudos to you for doing that. And Danon and I kind of are in the same area of expertise when it comes to spelling. We're both at about the 3rd grade level, and thank Yah that we have technology. You can even stick it in the Google search bar, and it'll correct your spelling for you. That's kind of neat. So if you don't have spell check, there is another way to do it. So next week's going to be an open discussion, and we'd like to keep it, towards calendar, of course, because we're the calendar club, right? We're a group of people that decided to investigate, and there are several people that I know of. I'm not going to call them out by name, because they think differently now than they did when they came in. But they were willing to come in and say, well, I disagree with that evening's, with that morning thing, or, something like that. And now they're like, oh, man, how could I have missed that, right? And so lives are being changed. And our ability to look at Scripture and see it, it's all over the place. Now that we kind of, get it, kind of like the Melchizedek message, it's all over the place. How could you not see it, once you get it? And we are a chosen generation because Yahusha said it's finished. And so this generation, you no longer have to be from the house of Aaron. You don't have to be a Levite, but we can all enter into the covenants of promise that was given to Abraham, which we were alienated from for such a long time. But in Yeshua, we can enter into that. And so we are a chosen generation of those that enter in, priests. And our job as priests is to share the truth and to intercede for one another, and our groups seem to be doing that. So I wanted to thank you, Tim. Thank you, Charlene, for pushing Tim just to take it on. I know it was uncomfortable, but by now you're starting to get used to it, right, Tim?
It's hard to get used to. I stumble all the time with reading, but I enjoy it. It's where my passion is. I love doing it. I really, really do. And what's most rewarding is when you see people understanding what you wrote, and you understand it. They can understand how you think too, and that's so rewarding. It's incredible.
Jeanette is a really excellent reader. You guys could be like, Aaron and Moses. You could, share something, and Jeanette could, speak out the, read it, or you guys would be a great team, So next week, again, open discussion and or presentations if you have, something that you want to present. Try to keep it around, calendar. Charlene, you were going to say something?
I just wanted to say something. I think one of our first or second presentations, we were talking about in calendar, you have to learn how to count. And we also said you have to learn how to count to 3. And I think this is probably our 3rd or 4th presentation that has had counting to 3. And there might be some that might have felt that they were put down when we said we're going to have to learn how to count to 3. This was not a joke. It is absolutely essential that we know how to count. We know when to start counting. We know how to count out these 24 cycles. The reason that we're getting so much practice in counting 1 to 3 in the Old Testament is that when we come up to Yahushua's passion, his death, his burial, his resurrection, and his ascension, and the Roman guard, and a couple of other things, if we do not know how to do this count, we will be lost. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that we're getting some practice, lots of fun and practice. Certainly we had a lot of practice last week in the Joshua study. And for next week, we'd like you to bring your questions. We probably won't be discussing a lot of material that we haven't gone over yet, but we'd like to hear from you on some of the material we presented. Where do you see that this is going? Do you see how all the puzzle pieces are coming together? We will have a review of probably 30 slides, and they're deep and they're heavy, and there is some new information, and that new information is to project you into the future to see where you're going to be going with this. I do believe that we'll have some information that's going to pop into Yahushua's passion and the Omer count, and I think there'll be a lot of discussion around that as well. So we'd just like you to be prepared and ready. I think we're going to have a lot of fun next week.
Great, I do too. And you know, one of the things that has really impressed me the most is just how much of Yeshua you see in being able to count to 3. And in these studies, it's like he just glares at us, and it's a beautiful light. The light, you know, it's the light. It's all about his light. So again, I want to thank everybody that has participated thus far, and look forward to really digging even deeper. I'm always up for that. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but if you tell me enough times, I just might get it. So any questions or comments or anything like that? Anybody want to add? Yes, I'm sorry.
I know how precious my time is. And so I want to thank everybody here that has given your time and given your ears to listen to what Charlene and I have worked on. I appreciate your time. I really do. Thank you for listening.
Tim, we and Charlene, we appreciate the time that you guys have put into sorting this out to follow. This is by far the best calendar study I've ever gone through, and makes more sense than anything else in accordance with Scripture. So you have tremendously blessed me, and I'm sure everybody else here.
Amen.
Let's praise Yahuwah for everything.
Yeah, can I say how do I do that? How can I say something?
Go ahead. Just speak up.
Yeah, this is Walter.
Hey, Walter.
And I appreciate very much the presentation. It was very plain, very clear. And it took me a long time to understand some of the things. But Charlene was a big help to answer a lot of questions. And I was able to translate a lot of this. And that helped me quite a bit to learn things, because when you translate from one language to another, it makes it even more harder and then clearer.
Right, right. Well, thank you for sharing that, Walter.
Charlene. Hi, Charlene.
Hi.
This is my wife, she's sitting right there.
We can see your hand waving.
Hi. Hi, I'm Joy.
Hi, Joy.
Yeah, I wish to thank you, Timothy and Charlene, for the presentation. This is my 3rd week, and I'm learning a lot of new things, and I'm going through things. And I just want to request that, you told that you have been doing this study in order. I've gone through creation part 1 and part 2, but which is the next one and the next one. Like, I don't know where to look for it. Should you just email to me that thing so that I can go through the YouTube sites and learn it from there?
That's great. Wow, that's a lot of positive stuff. No questions or anything? Mark?
Yeah, I would like to try to understand. I'm not the sharpest bull in the knife drawer. That's a quote by ex-Vice President Biden. It makes a lot of sense. I'm not the sharpest bull in the knife drawer, right? I am not, but I catch things spiritually, whereas you guys are gifted teachers. I'm gifted in other areas. And I appreciate what you're doing because I got a hunger and a desire to learn more. And I just would like to learn how you determine when the Equi-lux starts in the year. So maybe that could be brought up sometime. I don't know if now or
You know, I'll tell you, my son Joshua and I were out today, and we started our preparation for marking out this year. In the past years, what we've done is we've gotten other people's information, but we didn't get physically in there to do it. And I'm trying to find out what mic is open so we can say, hear some background. Yeah, there's some background.
I think it was coming from Joy's.
Okay, I think it's gone. So we went and took a compass to first put some marks in the line is where's north and south and east and west, right? And we got close enough to the wall where if we stick a stick in the ground, there's a shadow up on the wall. So we also have, come to find out over time, when you go outside and it becomes, what's that called, Charlene, right when it's about to cross the PM, what does PM stand for again?
Past the meridian.
Past the meridian. When you're at that neutral spot, the shadow in front of you is so small. I mean, it's just an itty bitty shadow, and so you know that you're facing, true north right then. Any day of the week, anytime. And so if you go out earlier than that, your shadow is going to be bigger. At certain times of the day, your shadow might look like you're 12 feet tall. But at that moment, there's very little shadow. You might get a shadow of the tip of your shoes in front of you. So you know where north is that way, right? But when the equinox comes, there's going to be a difference. And so we're getting ready to mark that difference out. We're painting some rocks so that we can line those rocks up with the east and west and the north and south and sticking the post in the middle of it and just spending the next few days. I think there's Charlene and Tim call them, what are those 5 days that we have there what's the word that you use to describe those 5 days? Reset days or
I think we're using balancing days.
Yeah, balancing days. Yeah. So we could also say that they're days of grace, because I think 5 represents grace, right? So we're marking things out and paying attention to what we wouldn't have paid attention before. So if we're in the woods or we're out camping or whatever, we can stick a stick in the ground and watch the shadow. It's not going to matter really where we're at once we get our eyes, fixed on it. But that's a good starting place. That's where we're starting anyway, because we haven't literally done it before. Yeah.
Mario, I just wanted to make a comment. There is another movement out there that's in our acquaintance of feast groups that are now switching out Equinox for the Equilux. And this is a very dangerous thing. I've been researching it this last couple of weeks. Timothy is prepared to do a presentation when we come back in April on how to understand Equinox. I'm hoping to have a presentation ready about Equilux. I'm finding that people don't know the difference. Just a few years ago, neither one of us even knew that the word Equilux was a word. We didn't even know that. But I think it's really important that because we're looking at counterfeits, we looked at counterfeits tonight, I think it's important that we address this counterfeit of Equilux. It is very serious. A lot of these feast keepers also follow the moon. The moon is a big one as well. But we should probably look at the Equilux thing, and Tim and I can decide, and of course the group can too. But while we're doing Equinox, we should probably consider doing the Equilux right after that and put the two together as a study so that everybody knows what in the world is going on, because this is going to come up. And some very good teachers of ours that we have appreciated through many, many years have just this year switched their calendar from Equinox to Equilux. And the information that they're giving, how can I say, I was shocked. It wasn't studied out well at all. These people are very good Bible students. I'm just shocked that they didn't go and look. You can solve the problem in 5 minutes on your computer, but they didn't go and look. Yeah. So we need to have answers. Remember, it says in 1 Peter, I think it's 3:8, somewhere in there, we need to have a ready word of an answer from the scriptures. They are now saying that Tekufa does not mean equinox. It means Equi-lux. And I think that we need to understand this. This is very confusing. We're finding that the counterfeits now are snugging up so close, and it's just almost very difficult to figure out how to peel these onion skins away. You can just know that the enemy is out there like a roaring lion. He's going to be throwing everything at Yahuwah's covenant calendar, because we need to have an answer for it. We cannot walk away from this stuff. We need to have a ready word to answer. And I think this is one area that a lot of us are going to have trouble with if we don't get some information and maybe massage it a little bit.
Okay, I think Neil has something to say, and also Sylvia put a link in the chat. And for those of you that want to save chats, before we log off, if you click on the chat and you click on the More button, it'll say More somewhere by the chats. I'm not able to view the chats right now, but it'll say More. And if you click on that button, you can hit Save Chat, and you can save it to wherever you want to save it to. Yeah, Neil.
You know, that the link I put in there, it doesn't have true calendar information. They'll say it is, but it'll give you an idea of the difference between the Equinox and the Equilux. So, especially because they're pointing out to the Zadok and the Enoch calendar, which we see now is not right, but it will give you information on the Equinox and Equilux. So I just wanted to verify that, so because it does push some things that are not true.
I firstly just wanted to thank everyone for their involvement in this. I think we're learning from each other, and that's great. This is my first calendar study for me, so I haven't looked at all these other calendars, and I'm not aware of what they claim and how they claim it. So for me, I think what's important for me is like actually finding out the truth of God's word. And I think if whatever study we do, we start off with what is true, and then look at these other ones. Because like today, I hadn't looked at these sorts of things before, so I don't really know the background of it, where some of you may have struggled with understanding, the truth because of the lies that have come in. I don't have to unlearn lies when it comes to calendar. So for me, if we can start with truth, that would be great, and then we can show where error is. That'd be very helpful. So yeah, but I'm loving this. And Tim, the other thing was a few weeks ago when we did Genesis 1 and 2, we had a bit of a discussion that went on about the darkness and the chaos and stuff. I know there's a few people that got interested in that topic. So maybe next week, if we can, I don't know, have a bit more on that. Or I know we didn't get to do a follow-up, and a few people asked for that. So just a reminder, that might be a nice way to close that off as well. But just love truth. And that's what I like, is we use scripture, not opinions, not rabbis, not this, not that. Here it is in the word, black and white. You can read it. It's there, and I love that about this study. So thank you so much for uncovering the word of God and presenting only what is in his word. It's great.
Amen. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, and we, probably the hardest thing for anybody to do is to stay open and realize that there might be more that he wants to reveal to us about something. You know, just about the time that, for me anyway, about the time I think, okay, I got it, it's like, boom, no you don't, Mario, that's just the beginning. There's so much more that you can get a hold of if you just, you know, don't get so locked into what we've been, you know, or to what we think that we have, right?
Yeah.
Our mind's like a parachute. If it's not open, it ain't gonna work.
Mario, that's a really good point. Like I have people say to me, "Oh, you're changing what you believe," and I'm like, "Well, no. As a child, you go to your parents and say, 'Hey, where do babies come from?' Your mum will say, 'You know, from your womb,' you know, like or from the tummy, you know." Later on, when you hit puberty, you find out that it's not just growing in mummy's tummy, but there's a process, there's a way that happened, and you get more detail. And that's what the Father does with his word is when you're a new baby, you get the milk, you get the stuff that's easy to understand. And later on, you actually get to really understand it, and it's just more truth. And it just blows science away because the Bible is accurate and true when you understand it correctly. Yeah, and observational science is true if you understand it correctly. Otherwise, you can believe whatever you want. And that's the word is the same. That's why there's so many people that don't believe the truth because they make it say what they want. So this is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
You pray for truth, you can't go wrong. I mean, he'll give it to you. I mean, I believe that's the Father's will. He wants us to walk in truth. And I was sitting here, I'm looking at the word Tekufa, and I'm seeing this complete circuit of the sun. So it completes its full circle. It says here in the Hebrew, in Strong, I use the Strongs. I need to learn how to get some other books. I need you guys to tell me what other books, because I got groomed on the Strongs and the Vines. Basically the Vines, then I graduated to the Strongs, which is more in depth, which I know it's not perfect, but it's better than the English dictionaries. So the Tekufa here is from, let me see, I had it here, 8622. And it's of the sun, of the course, of time lapse, and it's a circuit. It's come about an end, which when, like you quote all the time, Mario, Isaiah 46:10, the end is from the beginning. Yeah. So I'm grasping some of this, but I know I got to go.
Yeah, we're getting it little by little. You've all probably heard that old saying, the older I get, the smarter my dad gets. Have you ever heard that before? Yeah. Well, you know, my dad's not with us anymore, but I remember when we were getting married and my dad said, do you really know this girl? You know, and I'm like, yeah, Dad, I know her. You know, and he goes, I don't think you guys have been together long enough to really know each other, right? And I go, no, I know her, you know. And now after all these years, I really know her. He was right, you know. I didn't know her. You know, I just knew all the good parts that I thought that I knew, but there was a whole much, you know, a lot more even better parts that I didn't even, you know that she has. But yeah, you know, it's a relationship. It's getting to know Abba. Yes, yeah, Tim.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying, but I want to, Mark, I want you to turn to Ecclesiastes 1, verse 5. This is a really, really interesting text. Ecclesiastes 1, verse 5. This is Yahuwah's definition of a 360-degree completed circuit. The sun also rises, and the sun goes, and hurries back to the place where it arose. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out, when you go to the lunar calendar and they have their 29.5-day month, there is no such thing in the sky, according to Yahuwah's designation of a 360-degree completed circuit. The lunar month of 29.5 days is it's something like 385 degrees, not 360. They have it does a complete lunation from point to point, and then it goes beyond its starting point, so that they can achieve coming as close to Yahuwah's 30-day month as possible. Yahuwah will not allow them to duplicate the 30-day month. So they can only stretch the lunar cycle to 29.5 days. So it's actually a false, a total false lunation, according to Yahuwah's designation of a 360-degree circuit.
So the circuit completes, I noticed, is it the second day after the new moon? So I don't know if that's any significance, but I still am trying to learn how to calculate when the Tekufa, the equinox, starts. And I know it's a circuit is completed, but you have to be able to read the sun and its circuit in the sky, because that's part of Yahuwah's calendar. He says to look up. The stars are a witness for the seasons, it says in Bereshit 1:14.
One of the most basic ways of determining it is when the sun when the sun rises due east and sets due west and follows a very straight circuit across the sky. It does not waver from that straight line across the sky.
It doesn't waver north or south, right?
That's correct. So it follows. It rises due east, goes straight across the sky, and not sets. It disappears due west. Yeah, we gotta wake up some of this foul language of what we've learned, traditions in the past. So
Well,
that sun doesn't set.
I don't comprehend basically things, I would say, I don't know how to say what I want to say. The Spirit, I can see some scriptures, and the Spirit just bears witness with me. Hey, something's wrong here. The moon is not what we go by. When you look at, just certain scriptures I've had in my head in the past, and I read it, I come across them. Like I told you, like Mario said, he's not the sharpest knife. Well, he's sharper than me. Or I could be doing what he's doing, and it's not my calling. It's your call. You guys are called to do what you're doing. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Praise Abba. Well, I don't know what else to say other than thank you, and I guess we should say good night. And but before we do that, I'd like to pray, if that's okay. Just Abba, Father, we do thank you and praise you for your word that is alive and full of power. We thank you, Father, that you have allowed us to see, though we see through a glass darkly, and we know in part you've allowed us to do it. And it's you that's drawn us to yourself and given us a desire to want more and to understand how we can please you better with our lives and live out your Torah of truth. We pray, Father, that as the word that as your word becomes more alive in us, that others would behold your glory, that the word would walk in our lives and be recognized as your glory, as you. And we only want to glorify you and give you all the praise and honor and glory that's due to you in Melchizedek, Yahusha, our one and only high priest and Messiah. Father, I thank you for this study, and I thank you for Torah to the tribes that was willing to put their foot out and promote a study and make it happen. We pray that you would protect the ministry, Matthew and Tamara Nolan and their children, that you would guard them. And Father, we pray that your shalom, every shalom blessing would be upon each and every person here. And all we can say to you is thank you. To you be all praise, honor, and glory. You are Qodesh, Kadosh, Kadosh, so holy. And we thank you. Amen.
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 So Matthew will be on teaching tomorrow evening, Shabbat.
Yes, and the topic. Did you get a hold of that topic?
Can't wait.
It'll be good.
Yeah. He's going through the book of Enoch, I mean Ezekiel. I don't know what that came up with. I'll have to delete that out for sure. Matthew is going to be teaching on the book of Ezekiel. Yeah, boy, I had, I don't
Maybe
know.
we should call it the scrolls of Ezekiel.
Scrolls, yeah, the 13 scrolls of Ezekiel. That'd be a better term. There also, at least it was at one point in time on Torch of the Tribes website, they had a download. I don't know if that's still there. I hope that it is. It's called The Book of Ezekiel is Not Millennial. I don't know if you've seen that, but you might be able to get a copy of it. And it's broken down so that you can, in fact, if anybody would like it, I do have it saved in my documents. I can make it into a PDF and, send it out, or, just let me know. Just email me. Email me and I'll get it out. But he breaks it down as to where scroll 1 is and scroll 2 and, etc. So anyway, thank you again, and thank you those of you that are watching us on YouTube for joining us at Covenant Calendar Club. We hope you are richly blessed, and we look forward to the next time we can get together. Shalom, shalom. Have a wonderful evening.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Shalom. Adios.
Bye.
Bye-bye.